Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privilege of the floor will please retire to the gallery. The senators and all in attendance will stand and be led in prayer by the Reverend Jane Lyon, Whole Woman Conference, Clarksville, Virginia. The senators will remain standing and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America by Senate Page Adeline Gray Miller.
Let us pray. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. When this country was being formed, men came together, some of whom called you Jehovah, some God, some a higher power, some could not or did not call your name at all. But regardless of the name, everyone felt a power from outside themselves, a creative power that had been with them since birth, beckoning them to come together for a work for the common good with a relentless desire for the very thing for which we are created, freedom. Our forefathers knew they needed help, and today we are keenly aware in this day and era, so do we. So today, as this body of elected officials convene, enable and embolden them, God, to receive power, help, as in ages past, from one who formed us, one who led us in the formation of this great commonwealth and nation, one who desires and can heal our land. So that today we will choose wisdom over knowledge, character over partisanship, the common good over special interest. Now bless this governor and lieutenant governor, clerk, senators, leaders, assistants, pages, and helpers. We ask this in the name of the one who was willing to die for our deliverance, freedom, and life of all people. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call the roll. All those present will please record their vote aye. Clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. President. Senate Journal for Tuesday, January 29, 2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 1, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 35, noes 1, Rule 36-1. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the House of Delegates. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I respectfully move that we waive the reading of any communications received from the House of Delegates, sir.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived. Clerk will report any communication from the governor.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now comes the time in the morning hour where we have the privilege and the honor of welcoming our distinguished guest with us here in the gallery. I would give my daily reminder that the way this will proceed is that a senator will stand up and recognize an individual or group. I will then offer the warm welcome of the Senate, and we will all wait until the very end, and we will clap together. So I'd like to begin by calling on the senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff. For an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
Thank the senator. You have the floor.
Our pastor today was the Reverend Jane Lyon, who leads the whole women's conference, and she's based in Clarksville, and she is joined by her husband, Mike. I ask you to give them a warm welcome.
I thank the senator. Would the Reverend Jane Lyon and Michael please rise in the gallery if you're able? Reverend Lyon, Michael, thank you all so much for being here today. We're honored by your presence. And Reverend, thank you for that really gorgeous prayer. It got us off to exactly the right start here today. It was great to be with you in Clarksville and with Senator Ruff, who I know thinks the world of both of you. And you, of course, are welcome back here anytime. I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our two distinguished guests. Senator from Grayson, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise for an introduction.
Thank the senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the gallery, on behalf of myself, Senator Norman, Senator Dance, because these are two constituents of theirs, we have two very brave women that came today to speak on behalf of the capital murder bill that was before the Senate Finance Committee. These are the widows of Chad Dermeyer and Junius Walker. Michelle Dermeyer and Betty Walker are in the gallery today, along with former Colonel Huggins, and I would like the body to give them a warm welcome of the Senate.
I thank the senator. Would Michelle Dermeyer and Betty Walker and Colonel Huggins please rise in the gallery if you're able? Michelle and Betty, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for the eloquence of your example and for all that you're doing to make life better for other families that are impacted in the same profound way. And we are grateful that you've turned this pain into a wonderful purpose for so many other people. You, of course, are part of this family and are welcome back here anytime. We honor the service of your wonderful husbands and of your families. And we thank you and ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to Michelle Dermeyer and Betty Walker. Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for purposes of an introduction.
Thank the senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joining us today in the gallery is a group called the Arc of Northern Virginia. So on behalf of all of the Northern Virginia lawmakers, I want to extend a welcome to this group. This group represents parents, advocates, and loved ones of those who depend upon the state in our developmental disability waiver to receive services. And this group is eloquently and with great passion pointing out the need for really increased funding for the Developmental Disability Waiver Program. And they're asking that the General Assembly at least fund all of the Priority 1 slots as we go through our budget amendments this year. I was delighted to meet them in my office. They have some very compelling stories, and the group is very knowledgeable about the DD program. So with that, Mr. President, I ask that the Senate extend a very warm welcome to the Arc of Northern Virginia.
I thank the senator. Would our friends from the Arc of Northern Virginia in the gallery please rise if you're able? Thank you all so much for joining us here in the Senate today. Thank you for being in the Capitol and for your tremendous advocacy around such an important issue that impacts really all of us and all of our families. And we echo the generous and eloquent words of the Senator from Arlington in showing our gratitude for the work you do every day. We love seeing the bright orange scarves here in the Capitol. We know that that represents something very positive and very powerful, and each one of you deserves high praise for the work that you do. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from the Arc of Northern Virginia. The senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe. Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we're joined in the gallery by someone who is really special in Fairfax County. She's the first female sheriff in our county. Her name is Stacy Kincaid. She's a 31-year veteran of our sheriff's office. Her top priority, and something we so appreciate, has been reforming how our criminal justice and behavioral health systems intersect and interact. She's put together the Diversion First initiative, which is being widely replicated throughout the Commonwealth and the country. She has been a trailblazer in so many issues, particularly recognizing the value and dignity of everyone in Fairfax County, and I hope you'll give her and her deputy, Sheriff Dempsey, the warm welcome of the Senate.
I thank the senator. Would our friends Sheriff Stacy Kincaid, Deputy Sheriff Dempsey, and our friend John Jones, Executive Director of the Virginia Sheriff Association, please rise in the gallery. Thank you to all three of you for your tremendous leadership with our Sheriff's Association. And thank you also to Sheriff Kincaid. I think Senator Howe, in her eloquent remarks, used exactly the right word for you, which is a trailblazer. You've done such incredible work in Fairfax County, but really all over the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you've taken that message around the country as well. So thank you for the care that you take of those in your custody, and you set a bright light and a bright example for all of us to follow. So to Sheriff Dempsey, and to our dear friend John Jones, who's been a leader for so many years, I would ask everyone please to join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our three distinguished guests. Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for two introductions.
I thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, I would like to welcome to the gallery today a friend from the state of Maryland, Zuberi B. Williams. Zuberi is a district court judge in the state of Maryland. He is a graduate of Texas Christian University and the Washington College of Law at American University. He clerked for our own U.S. District Court Judge Gerald Lee, who also was a Fairfax County judge before that. And although I was not his law clerk, he doesn't hesitate to call me on occasion and offer me advice anyway. But we'd like to welcome Judge Williams here as a licensed member of the Maryland Bar. I hope he looks out for me when I cross the Potomac on occasion, and we give him the warm greeting in the Senate. Thank you.
I thank the Senator very much. Would Judge Zuberi Williams please rise in the gallery? Judge Williams, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you in the Senate and in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We thank you for your leadership in the law. And I'm very familiar with you because you and I were co-clerks for Judge Gerald Lee, and what a great legacy he has left in the form of your service on the bench in Montgomery County. We look forward to your elevation in so many respects, and the way that you've elevated so many other law students and lawyers and judges is exemplary and something that should be followed all throughout Maryland and in this nation. So I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to Judge Zuberi Williams. Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next, I'd like to introduce some students in the gallery, or representatives of an organization known as Virginia 21. My green sheet said George Mason, and that was crossed out, and it said schools from all over the Commonwealth. So a word about Virginia 21. It was originally chartered in 2005, I believe was the first year that they lobbied in the General Assembly. I remember it very well. One of my best volunteers was working for them, and they had an executive director by the name of Jesse Ferguson, who still sends me emails occasionally. Very, very kind of him. So anyways, I hope that we could recognize the representatives of Virginia 21.
Thank the Senator. Would our leaders from Virginia 21 in the gallery please rise if you're able? Thank you all so much for being here today, for your presence. We echo the eloquent words of the Senator from Fairfax City about your leadership on so many issues important to not only our young people, but to the future of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I had the pleasure of visiting with you last evening and the honor of hearing from you just some of the brightest leaders that we have in this great Commonwealth. And so we know you will do tremendous things. You're representing at universities and colleges and community colleges all around the Commonwealth of Virginia. And our future is indeed very bright because of each one of you. So I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our leaders from Virginia 21. Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for two introductions.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, today in the gallery we have members of the National Urban League of Young Professionals, Jermichael McCoy of the Urban League of Greater Richmond, Jason Ng, Urban League of Hampton Roads Young Professionals, Deborah Hunt, Urban League Guild of Hampton Roads, Victoria Clark, Urban League of Northern Virginia. Please join me in welcoming the National Urban League to the Senate.
I thank the Senator. Would our leaders from the National Urban League of Young Professionals please rise in the gallery if you're able? Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your leadership all throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. I heard that Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and Richmond were well represented with us here today. You all do tremendous work both on advocacy and engaging in community service to help everyone rise no matter where they start in life. And it's exactly the kind of message that we want to deliver in terms of a hopeful message here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we are grateful to each one of you, to the YPs as we call you for short, but you guys are the future of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our leaders from the National Urban League Young Professionals. Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also visiting with us today are a group of wonderful people from Transitions Family Violence Services, and they engage in work assisting survivors of domestic violence on the Virginia Peninsula. So in the gallery today, we have visiting members from the Board of Directors, staff, and volunteers. On behalf of Senator Norman Mason and myself, please welcome them to the Senate.
Thank the Senator. Would our friends from Transitions Family Violence Services please rise in the gallery if you are able? Thank you all so much for being here today, and also thank you for the work that you do on the peninsula and throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia to support families and survivors of domestic violence. It is such an important issue, and to have that kind of commitment and heart for people who find themselves in difficult situations really speaks to your character and to the fact that your lives have great purpose. And so we look forward to more of your tremendous work in Virginia. We echo the eloquent words of the Senator from Hampton, who joined by other senators who you help serve their constituents as well. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our leaders from Transitions Family Violence Services. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator Sturdivant.
Good afternoon, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, Senator.
I rise for an introduction.
I thank you. You have the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, joining us in the Senate gallery today are members of the George Mason University community. They are here for Mason Lobby Day, advocating for things that are important to George Mason, which is my alma mater. I know that Senator McPike went there as well, and I'm sure there are others here in the Senate. I hope we would offer them the warm welcome of the Senate, Mr. President.
I thank the Senator. Would our leaders from George Mason University please rise in the gallery if you're able? Thank you all so much for being here with us today. I'm honored, we all are, by your presence, and you have some distinguished alum here from your great university serving in this very body, and we're so proud of all the work that you're doing at George Mason. And we see Dr. Cabrera's a wonderful bride is here, and thank you so much for being here, the First Lady of George Mason University, and all of the great leaders. We got to be with you last night at your legislative reception, and we're so proud. You're now the largest public university here in the Commonwealth of Virginia and one of the leaders all around the world. So it's a source of pride. We love Mason Nation. I know Senator McPike joins in with Senator Sturdivant. And I would ask everybody to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to the Patriots from George Mason University. the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, rise for the purposes of an introduction.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
We have with us today the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors, which consists of not just them, but Dulles Area Association of Realtors and Prince William Association of Realtors. There's about 80 members down here, and they represent over 16,000 realtors that we have. They've been a great resource for us. They've been involved in advocating for transportation, schools, and other things. And in fact, the realtors down here last year, if you remember when we had that bill to try to raise money, they were willing to even, support the bill, even though it raised a nickel on the grantor's tax. So they've been really great citizens, and they do a really good job. And I would ask that you extend the welcome of the Senate of Virginia.
I thank the senator. Would our leaders from the Northern Virginia Realtors Association in the gallery please rise if you're able? Thank you all so much for joining us here today. It is always an honor and a pleasure to have our wonderful realtors with us here in the Capitol. We echo the eloquent, generous words of the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw, and I know all senators here appreciate the work that you do. Again, in Northern Virginia, but really all throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. You have great professionalism. I know in Northern Virginia you sold about 22,000 homes last year, $13.1 billion in volume, and you've made our communities a wonderful, wonderful place to live. And so when we're with realtors, we always feel like we're at home, and we want to make sure that you all feel at home here in the Senate of Virginia. So I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our great realtors from Northern Virginia. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for purposes of an introduction,
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, for those of you that were here in 2007, I know that you many times cringed when I stood up and spoke about the incredible commemoration of the 400th anniversary of the founding of America. Today, I'm very pleased to stand up and speak very briefly and introduce an outstanding young lady to you. But as you know, 2019, there is another commemoration, and it's the 400th anniversary of the first legislative assembly that convened in the New World. Interestingly enough, the archaeologist Bill Kelso was in the House just a moment ago, and he started the archaeological dig that led to founding James Fort. Interestingly enough, in just about a week ago, they found the actual foundation of the original church where the General Assembly convened in 1619, which is really extraordinary. But in addition to commemorating the first legislative assembly, we'll also be commemorating the first African Americans to arrive to North America, the first English-speaking women who arrived in the New World. And contrary to what the Pilgrims said, the first Thanksgiving that took place was in Virginia. I often say it's just the Pilgrims had a better PR firm than Virginia on it, but it did happen in Virginia. The caption and moniker of the 2019 commemoration is American Evolution, and we're talking about democracy, diversity, and opportunity. There really have been some extraordinary events already. The Godspeed, which set sail in 2007, has already had some adventures to Baltimore and Alexander. The British Embassy has already hosted a reception in Washington, D.C. And for those of you that are proponents of public education, K through 12 is participating in the 2019 commemoration school initiatives. Commonwealth of Virginia has put quite a bit of money in it, but I'm pleased to say that over $4 million has been raised in private dollars to do this commemoration. There are many, many events that are going on. There is a gallery exhibition called Tenacity Women in Jamestown. Also in the Capitol Visitor Center, which is not too far from here, there's an extraordinary document that is there, and that's the Great Charter and the General Assembly founding legacy is over there. Mr. President, I would like to also recognize Senator Mamie Lock and Senator Ryan McDougall of the Jamestown-Yorktown Foundation Board, along with the members of Senator Hanger, Senator Howell, Senator Newman, Senator Ruff, and thank them for their contributions. But a very special recognition, Mr. President. In the gallery is the Virginia Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Michelle Cottrell Williams of Wakefield High School in Arlington, who has been a leading advocate on the K through 12 engagement statewide. So if you would please be so kind, Mr. President, to extend the warmest welcome to those guests in the Senate, including the Teacher of the Year, as they help us commemorate the 400th anniversary.
We'll commemorate the beginning of that introduction. My friend, Senator Norman. Would our friends and leaders from the 2019 commemoration leadership team please rise in the gallery if you are able? Thank you so much for being here with us today. Also to Michelle Cottrell Williams, our Teacher of the Year. Thank you for your engagement of our young people around such an important moment in the history of Virginia, but also of this nation and really of the world. And we echo the eloquent, generous, and very succinct words of the senator from James City County about the importance of the work that each one of you is doing. And as I look at that leadership tableau right there, I see some of the finest leaders that the Commonwealth of Virginia has ever had. And the fact that you would step up in this moment in our history does us a great honor, and we want to honor you all in turn. So I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our leadership for the 2019 commemoration celebration. Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Mr. President, rise for a request.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, it is with great trepidation that I rise to request unanimous consent for the entry of a Senate joint resolution involving the designation of July 2019 and each succeeding year as Cleft and Craniofacial Awareness and Prevention Month, Mr. President. This comes to me late in the game. I apologize at the request of some physicians from CHKD.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate grant consent to introduce a joint resolution? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. I heard nothing. The consent of the Senate is granted to introduce the joint resolution. I thank the Senator. Senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
Thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Even though we do not have a green sheet, and I got to tell you, this is a disturbing habit I've noticed over the past several weeks. People from my jurisdiction are coming here and not requesting that I introduce them. But these people are not going to escape so easily. Today we have the Chief of Police for the town of Farmville, Mr. Andy Ellington, and the Assistant Chief of Police, Mr. Bill Hogan, from the town of Farmville, and I ask that you give them the warm welcome of the Senate.
I thank the Senator. Would our Chief and Assistant Chief of Police from Farmville please rise in the gallery if you're able? Chief and Assistant, thank you so much for joining us here today from Farmville, a beautiful part of the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're grateful for your leadership in law enforcement and for all you do every single day to keep our communities and our families safe. We also, again, thank your families because we know that law enforcement is a family business, and so give them our deepest gratitude. You, of course, are welcome back here anytime, and I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our two distinguished guests from Farmville. Do any other senators wish to be recognized for purposes of an introduction? Is there any other business to come in the morning hour? Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just rise for purposes of an announcement to try to orient the Senate as to a little unusual process today.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, the Senate Finance Committee had an unusually robust finance meeting today, and we did not get through all of the bills. After we go through all of the Senate bills on the third reading, I'm going to request, Mr. President, a brief recess. The Senate Finance Committee will reconvene in Senate Room 3, which is downstairs, the big room at the bottom of the stairs, I believe. The primary purpose will be to consider the conformity bills that have been submitted by multiple senators. It is my expectation that there will be a comprehensive amendment in the nature of a substitute to address those bills, perhaps in one bill. So we will do that, and then upon completion of the Senate Finance Committee and perhaps a modest hiatus after that, we will return to complete the balance of the calendar. So Senate Room 3, for those of you that have conformity bills, on recess at the conclusion of all Senate bills on the third reading.
Thank you, Senator. Madam Clerk. Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are still in the morning hour, I hope, or can we return to that?
Still the morning hour, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for the purposes of an introduction.
Thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. In the gallery today, we have a very fine young man who has stepped out in politics. I promise I will be more brief than Senator Norman's introduction of the Jamestown crowd. But quite frankly, he is probably one of the younger Board of Supervisors members that we have probably in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He's a really fine young man. He's come to watch us do our business today and certainly has an interest, Mr. President, in a bill that we're going to present this afternoon on transportation relating to making sure that those costs to Northern Virginia commuters is reasonable. So, Mr. President, if you extend the warm welcome of the Senate to Loudoun County Board of Supervisor member Ron Meyer, I would most appreciate it.
Thank the Senator. Would Supervisor Ron Meyer please rise in the gallery? Supervisor Meyer, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for your leadership in Loudoun County and in Northern Virginia. We're grateful to your service, and it's always wonderful to see this generation stepping up to leadership. And so we echo the eloquent, generous words, Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley, and you're welcome back here anytime. Have a safe trip back up 95 later today, and we ask everybody to please join us and extend the warmest welcome of the Senate to Loudoun County Supervisor Ron Meyer. Is there any other business to come in the morning hour? Seeing none, the clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on third reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I respectfully now move that all the Senate bills on the third reading, including all Senate bills on pages 1 through 9, which would include Senate Bill 1594 through Senate Bill 1720, be placed on their final passage in the block. Any senator who desires to remove one of these Senate bills from the block should please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 1 through 9, Senate Bill 1594 through Senate Bill 1720, be placed upon their final passage in the block, with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 1594.
Mr. President.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderland.
Can Senate Bill 1594 please come out of the block?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1594 will be removed from the block.
Senate Bill 1336. Senate Bill 1077. Senate Bill 1083.
Mr. President.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderland.
Can Senate Bill 1083 please come out of the block?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1083 is removed from the block.
Senate Bill 1135. Senate Bill 1224. Senate Bill 1256. Senate Bill 1271. Senate Bill 1328. Senate Bill 1388, Senate Bill 1409, Senate Bill 1410. Senate Bill 1414. Senate Bill 1416. Senate Bill 1427. Senate Bill 1436. Senate Bill 1490. Senate Bill 1516. Senate Bill 1599. Senate Bill 1692. Senate Bill 1720.
Question is, shall the bills in the block pass? That is all bills except for Senate Bills 1594 and 1083. All in favor of passage of the bills will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bills in the block pass.
Returning to page 1, Senate Bill 1594.
Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. Speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
This is a bill that comes from my local government in regard to boundary between two counties that is along a curvy line, and because it doesn't follow a typical geographic line that can be drawn, it has been an agreement between the two counties that people on one side of the road vote and pay taxes in one county and people on the other side vote in another. But with the changes we had last year with the registrars, those lines became blurred and a straight line was drawn, and people were uncertain where they were to vote and where they paid taxes and if they could actually vote and pay taxes in the same locality. If our localities, like others in Virginia, are allowed to use a GIS system, they can resolve this simply and inexpensively, and that's what this bill does. It allows all localities in Virginia to use GIS to determine these boundary lines, and I move that we pass the bill.
Thank the senator. Do any senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1594? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1594 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. Senate Bill 1594 passes.
On page 2, Senate Bill 1083.
Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass.
Senator, you have the floor.
Speaking to that motion, this is effectively a convenience bill. Current sales and use law requires that folks pay sales tax upon purchase. If they do not, they are required by law to remit that tax on their own. Currently, Amazon is doing that after the Supreme Court ruled against Wayfair in the South Dakota case. They also have started doing this. The association that represents the local merchants around the state asked me to offer this legislation last fall. And since that time, 8 other senators, offered similar proposals. The subcommittee rolled all those bills into this one. This should create a level playing field. For years, local businesses have complained that it's been unfair that they have to use competitive disadvantage. They are at a competitive disadvantage because customers are required to pay sales tax added on at the time of purchase, while those buying out of state sometimes forget to pay the owed tax. No one can be sure what the financial effect will be, and I do not believe that there are currently that many Virginians who are avoiding paying taxes they're required by law to pay. Therefore, I renew my motion.
I thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1083? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1083 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 3.
Ayes 37, noes 3. Senate Bill 1083 passes.
Regular calendar Senate bills on third reading. Senate Bill 1169. A bill relating to apprenticeships, ratio of apprentices to journeymen.
Mr. President, can I take this by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1169 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1173.
A bill relating to the Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Education Program eligibility.
Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass, and speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
This Senate bill provides for the Virginia Military Survivors Dependent Education Program. We currently provide tuition grants to dependents and family members of service members that were injured overseas in combat situations. The problem is that the determination and ruling is currently very narrow to only those individuals that were directly impacted. Even though we know that we have veterans that are injured while overseas in theater, this broadens the category to allow additional dependents 90% and a greater for those dependents to receive the same tuition grant, Mr. President. And with that, I move the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1173? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1173 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. Senate Bill 1173 passes.
Senate Bill 1326, a bill to require the State Board of Social Services to amend its regulations regarding bed limits for licensed assisted living facilities.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to move that bill go by for the day. And speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. I know a number of you have heard from some folks that think this bill is broader than it is, and I received a suggested amendment last night that will narrow it even further, that I want to be sure that social services is comfortable with, and I think this may be amended in a way that will make this a lot more palatable to some of the folks that have opposed it.
Thank the Senator. Without objection, Senate Bill 1326 will go by for the day.
We have finished third reading. Oh, sorry. My page was cut. Senate Bill 1786, a bill relating to conditional release of geriatric and terminally ill patients, prisoners.
The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
As the bill was introduced, it applied to also to disability, but it's now only applies to terminally ill. If you're in prison on a Capital One, a Class 1 felony, then it doesn't apply to you. But if you're over 65 and have served more than 5 years of the sentence, or 60 or older, and served more than 10 years of the sentence, and the medical prognosis is you have less than a year to live, or 12 months or less, then the recommendation then goes to the parole board. You're not automatically released. The parole board can consider releasing you. And the reason that the Public Safety Secretary asked me to put this in is the cost of caring for these people is extreme. And so if there was a alternative, then this is what the alternative would be, and that's to release them, to a hospital, a nursing home, or whatever. But to point out again, they have to have served a certain amount of the sentence. It doesn't apply to a Class 1 felony. It still has to be considered by the parole board. So with that explanation, I would ask that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to ask the patron if you'll yield for a question.
Senator, yield for a question?
Sure.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
I just would like you to respond to the concern that these terminally ill prisoners will definitely have some kind of a medical care plan. So we're just
They won't release. They're not going to put them outside the gate of the prison. There has to be a place to put them.
I wanted you to assure the body that in fact was the case. Right. Knowing how kind your heart is and what good public policy you make.
Somewhere in there's a compliment, ladies and gentlemen.
Senator, for what purpose is the Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville, rise?
Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, we heard this bill in committee. The original bill, before it got amended in committee, also would allow geriatric parole to people who are permanently physically disabled, which was defined as a chronic or progressive medical condition caused by injury, disease, or illness that renders a person permanently and irreversibly physically disabled. And I just want to point out, I didn't like taking that out. We asked the Secretary of Public Safety how much money it was going to cost taxpayers by making that amendment. It was $17 million that we're going to pay extra, according to the Secretary of Public Safety, because we're not going to give people who have a permanent physical disability the ability to get geriatric release. Because who objected? The Commonwealth attorneys. They said somebody might claim permanent disability from diabetes or something else. I don't think our parole board is that stupid, but I just want to highlight for everybody, we're spending $17 million a year keeping people incarcerated who are permanently physically disabled. And I think that's idiotic. I think we ought to give these people the right to at least petition to ask the parole board to let them out so taxpayers aren't fronting this insane expense. And so we adopted the committee amendment yesterday, unfortunately, but I think this is something the Finance Committee ought to look at and we ought to look at next year. And so I support the bill as it is, but it doesn't go far enough.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Mr. President, I'd like to ask the patron a question, please.
Will the patron yield for a question?
Certainly.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask the gentleman, the genesis of the bill seems to be saving money. The way it looks to me is that basically the Department of Corrections is going to be able to release this geriatric patient someplace. So if we're not paying for that health care in the correctional facility, where are we going to pay for it outside?
Well, there's no question these people generally don't have a lot of money, so you either treat them in there, and I'm just telling you what the Secretary told me. It's a lot more expensive to treat them in there, where they don't have the mechanism for doing that, than it is to put them in a place where they do have the facilities. It is cheaper overall. But I'm just telling you, that was the genesis of the bill, was that they're not set up to handle that, and the cost, because they're not set up, is exorbitant.
Just one more question.
Further question?
Would yield.
Senator yield?
Sure.
Yes. Senator has the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my angst in the bill comes from if we release this geriatric terminally ill patient into a hospital and they do not have the ability to pay that hospital under our current laws, the hospital has to provide that care regardless of the ability to pay. So I guess my question is, are we saving the taxpayers' money and then in some cases just putting it on a hospital?
Well, we put a lot on the hospitals because we don't have various types of medical care. And when I asked this of them, it's a lot cheaper to do it there where they have the facilities than where they've got to constantly, add stuff or take stuff away or bring stuff in. That's expensive. And that's why, they're there. These aren't healthy people.
Thank the gentleman.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black, rise?
Ask the gentleman a question.
Will Senator yield for a question?
Sure.
Senator has the floor.
So presently, we have regulations in place that permit the release of people, or at least consideration of their release upon petition. What is the change that this bill brings about?
Well, essentially, we've now written it into the code and in the exact form they want it. And keep in mind, it's not an automatic release. It has to go to this goes to the parole board. They have the final say.
Further question?
Senator, you're for further question?
Sure.
Senator has the floor.
Under the previous law, was it necessary for them to first go to the governor before they reached the parole board?
That I can't answer. I don't think they had to go to the governor.
So,
further question?
Yes.
Senator yields.
So you're saying that all this does is it puts into the code.
It makes it easier. It facilitates the release of people who the medical community has said are terminally ill and will die within 12 months.
But, Mr. President, but it does facilitate and ease the process. It makes it easier for them to achieve a release.
Right.
Okay, thank you. And I'll speak at the appropriate time.
Mr. President, if I could supplement the senior senator from Fairfax's answer, I think the process prior to this bill is that for a conditional, you had to go to the governor for a conditional pardon. And this bill simply empowers the parole board with the authority to make the decision if certain conditions can be proven. Those conditions are spelled out in the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You want to speak to the bill?
I'm through asking questions.
Okay, so now's a good time. Let's speak to the bill. Senator, the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the clarification on this because it was my understanding that previously you had to go through the governor. The parole process was somewhat easier when you had someone who fell into this geriatric category, but you still had to go through the governor. And the benefit of going through the governor is that when a criminal is required to go through the governor and the governor has to make a decision, the governor better be pretty careful. Republican or Democrat, he better be pretty careful, because if he does something that turns out to be outrageously erroneous, such as happened with Michael Dukakis many years ago, where he was very liberal with releasing people, and there were some disastrous, some hideous things that happened, and it was, it reflected on him. Now, as a result of that particular event, governors across the country began to exercise much greater caution and prudence in the way that they address these issues. Now, if you look at what this says, we're saying that an individual who has reached the age of 65, which is honestly pretty darn young, and he has served 5 years of his sentence, he suddenly becomes automatically eligible for parole consideration without the governor having to put fingerprints on it at all. Now, think about the types of crimes that we're talking about. We're talking about individuals who may have been involved in a torture, rape, murder, serial murders of many children, and all of a sudden he spent 5 years behind bars, and this thing can be swept through. I guess, my emotions about this are tainted by having been responsible for all of the death penalty cases in the Department of Defense back years ago. And I won't describe the cases. I think there were about 6 of them from all of the services. But I recall one in particular that I will not recite here. And I will tell you, it was so agonizing just thinking of what happened to those victims who were serially murdered, waiting their turn. And I really believe that before somebody like that is considered for release, the governor needs to have his fingerprints on it. Now, I have put a lot of effort into pardons, and I managed to obtain a pardon for Olin Crawford, she was the first woman ever confined under the 3-time loser statute, And it took me 10 years, and I finally got a pardon under Governor Tim Kaine. He was the fourth governor I'd worked through. But when that pardon was issued, he had to have his fingerprints on it. And he, to his credit, I think he made a very fine decision. And that's the way that it should be. I'm not against pardons. I think pardons should be given. And I'm not necessarily against being a little bit more lenient. Sometimes we have people who get cancer and that sort of thing. And if the crime is not terribly egregious, well, it's going to have to be somewhat terribly egregious, but there are distinctions. The governor, I think, has a little bit of insulation. People say, okay, well, he did this, but this was somebody who was about to pass away. I really believe that when we take the governor out of the picture, we lower the defenses of the population against an erroneous decision. And keep in mind that it's not just people who are in the grave who were the victims of these folks. It is the families of the people who are in the grave, who live their entire lives recounting what a son or a daughter or a father or a brother went through. And they have to live with that every day until the day that they die. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am adamantly opposed to this. I think any loosening of what is now a fairly balanced policy, I think is a mistake, and I would urge you to vote against it.
Mr. President, you heard one of the and members of the Senate. You heard one of the examples. There were quite a few where this may have been somebody who raped and killed many children. I got news for you. You rape and kill many children in Virginia, more than likely you're fried. Okay, that's a Class 1 felony, and they don't even get considered under this bill. And anybody who thinks that suddenly I've become a softy obviously isn't familiar with my record. This bill came out 13-2 because it made sense. Taking the governor out of it is hardly going to turn loose, criminals. These are people who probably haven't murdered anybody, because if they did, they'd be facing more than likely a Class 1 felony, so this wouldn't even apply to them. So they're not murderers of mass murderers of children and rapists of children. So I would think that the people in the Public Safety Department, the Department of Corrections, would know, what's best policy. And a majority of these people, and there was some concern over the people who were permanently disabled, so we took that out of the bill, much to the objection of the senator from Eastern Fairfax. But this is what you have before you. This costs the state less money and is less onerous on the Department of Corrections than the current policy, which is why I sponsored the bill, or agreed to sponsor the bill. So with that, Mr. President, I would hope that the members would support the bill.
Senator, for what purpose, Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I happen to speak to the bill.
Senator, the floor.
I happened to have a conversation today with the head of the parole board. They're backed up on their pardon requests. These all have to be investigated. It takes many, many months to get an investigation done. What this does, and hopefully this sets the senior senator from Loudoun's mind at ease, is that what this is designed to do is to provide a geriatric parole hearing for someone in an expedited fashion, because the process through the governor would take so long that the person may pass away before that time would happen. So this is somebody who's been diagnosed with something that's not going to last 12 months, and the procedure to get a pardon may take that long. So this just gets them to the parole board so that decision can be made. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan, rise?
Mr. President, I don't mean to belabor, but I wonder if the Senior Senator for Fairfax would answer one question for me.
Senator rise for a question.
I'm just curious. Can you tell me what the savings are again? I'm sorry I missed that.
I can't do it in a dollar and cents term.
Do you know if those are net savings, considering the cost of the outpatient services versus jailers? Those just savings to the criminal justice system?
I don't have that information. I was just told that it was cheaper on the state to have them, outside the prison being cared for than inside the prison.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1786? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1786 pass?
One other thing. Willie Horton was not a senior citizen. Willie Horton was a criminal who was a lot younger than a senior citizen.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 1786 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 29, noes 11.
Ayes 29, noes 11. Senate Bill 1786 passes. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, there was a point in time where this body followed parliamentary procedure, and all questions are to be directed through the President of the Senate. And the President of the Senate will allow individuals to complete their questions and allow the responders to also complete their responses. And that is a continuing matter. Mr. President, I am now going to ask that the Senate stand in recess until 1:45, sir. And immediately upon recess, the Senate Finance Committee should convene in Senate Room 3, which is again at the foot of the stairs in the annex. We're going to take up the conformity bills, and I would say, Mr. President, that any and all senators are invited to attend the Finance Committee meeting, whether they have a bill or not, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, the Senate will stand in recess until 1:45 p.m. Will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. During that hiatus, do we need to return to the morning hour, or are we ready to continue with the calendar, sir?
I think we can continue with the calendar.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Senator.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your patience as we ran over a little bit, but I would like to redirect your attention to page 11 of the calendar for purposes of a motion. Mr. President, I would now move that all the Senate bills on the second reading on the uncontested calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 11 through 14, including Senate Bill 1462 through Senate Bill 1782, advanced to their engrossment and third reading in the block after the adoption of any amendments. Any senator who desires to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
Thanks, Senator. Question is, shall all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 11 through 14, Senate Bill 1462 through Senate Bill 1782, be engrossed in advance to their third reading in the block after the adoption of the amendments thereto, and that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 1462, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute.
Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. President. I reluctantly moved the adoption of the committee substitute.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be reluctantly agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1725, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute, and there is a floor substitute.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Mr. President, this was the bill about duck blinds that we talked about yesterday. I think the senator from Fairfax is now good with this bill. So I guess what we need to do is I need to yield to the senator from Spotsylvania to discuss his.
You move your substitute?
I'm happy to move that the committee substitute be adopted.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All.
Mr. President?
Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Speaking to the substitute from the committee.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, we heard dialogue yesterday about the substitute and the exceptions on the substitute to cut out Virginia Beach. What I didn't hear yesterday was the reasons of why Virginia Beach was cut out. The floor substitute addresses some of the issues that I've brought to the concern of my colleague, and I still don't feel like those were adequately addressed. I think the floor substitute, if we could ever get to it, would address and alleviate some of the concerns of my colleague from Stafford. But I also would like to maybe clarify a couple of the comments he made yesterday, Mr. President. My colleague made the comment that there had been incidences of safety-related issues, and if my colleague would yield for a question, Mr. President.
Will Senator yield for a question?
I yield, Mr. President.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Mr. President, I would ask my colleague if he had gotten any complaints from DGIF of anybody being wounded or shot during this last year during duck season.
Senator has the floor.
Question, Mr. President, but they did not file any complaints with me, but I'm not the complaint department from DGIF. I am aware that DGIF has had issues and having to resolve conflicts where people build blinds and put these stake blinds right beside people's houses. Sometimes they even put them on their shore, on their hard ground rather than in the water, which is why we bring this bill, to try to get these blinds offshore a little bit so that we don't have those conflicts between the homeowner, landowner, and the person who wants to hunt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Follow-up question?
Yield for a further question?
Yield.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Knowing my colleagues is an avid bird hunter like myself, typically when a blind is set up, is it faced towards the shore?
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, that depends. When you hunt ducks, you hunt the wind. And so ducks always pitch into the wind. So depending upon which way the wind is blowing, that's the way you're going to hunt those birds, because that's the only way they'll come in. So most blind hunters have the ability to shoot in all directions. Certainly with the floating blinds, which really are the biggest problem, they move in all directions all the time. So I can't answer his question.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the Senator yield for another question?
Will Senator
Yes,
yield?
Mr. President.
Does the Senator know the maximum effective range of a standard 12-gauge shotgun shooting double B or triple B shot at 1,700 feet per second?
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, as I've told people on this floor and elsewhere before, we shoot steel shot, which is non-toxic shot at waterfowl, because if you shoot lead, the lead goes to the bottom of the water. Those birds mistake it for feed. They eat it. They get lead poisoning and die. So some time ago, we enacted a law that requires steel shot. Lead shot flattens out as it goes through the air, and it flattens out much more when it hits something. So the farther it goes, the less effective it is. The steel non-toxic shot keeps its shape, and it will penetrate at long distances. And so I guess the simple answer to the senator from Spotsylvania's question is, I do not want you shooting at me with steel shot at any less than 150 yards.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand what my colleague from Stafford would want, but let me just educate him a little bit on the ammunition that he is using. Mr. President, 1,700 feet per second shooting steel shot, the largest shot that you would use to kill this type of game. The maximum effective range is 70 yards. 70 yards, Mr. President, is the maximum effective lethal range of that. In the Senator's amendment, he has 150, which would actually put you in the way of navigable water. And so, Mr. President, I would ask my colleagues to take into consideration trying to get to the floor amendment to truly address what I believe is a potential issue that I'm still not clear why my colleague from Stafford is carrying this bill. If we don't have a ton of complaints coming from D.C. Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, we're not hearing about it, but I'm certainly hearing about it from those who hunt. And I have some statistics if the body would like to hear how much we bring in income in hunting, why we have Chesapeake Bay retrievers named after our Chesapeake Bay, and the amount of hunters and numbers that we have over the last 3 years.
Mr. President, I think there was a question in there somewhere. And you know what?
Wouldn't you agree, Mr. President?
The gentleman from Spotsylvania is right. The maximum lethal effective range, it will kill you, is about 70, maybe 80 yards, depending upon how good of a shot you are. That's why I picked 150 yards, because you could be maimed and not be killed. And so I wanted to give a little bit of extra room to make sure people aren't getting hurt, not just killed. I'd ask we support the committee substitute, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator. For what purpose the Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville, rise?
Speaking to the bill very briefly.
Senator's the floor.
Or the floor substitute, I think. I'm sorry, the
motion
committee substitute.
Yes.
Right.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I represent, I think, about 60 miles of Potomac shoreline, represented for now 10 years, both when I was in some other body and now here. I can't tell you how many people have called me unhappy about these are folks who live in some both very big houses and some very modest houses, all the way from little shacks down on the river where they go on the weekend, all the way up to some very big places. And they've got people within 10 yards sometimes, 20 yards of their shoreline, hunting at 6 in the morning while they're trying to sleep. They're afraid to have kids in their yards. I get calls about this all the time. And I'm probably the only person in Northern Virginia that gets those kinds of calls. No, George Barker does, or the other senator over here does. So I checked with my county and with DGIF. The senator from King George's proposal is sort of status quo and keeps everything, or it helps. My local governments like it. It's the way to go. I have concerns about the other proposal, and that's why I think we should vote the one that came out of committee. Committee substitute, right.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on this motion? All right, we're going to vote now if you're all game. I know. Had to do it. He said that's foul. That's very good. Question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Because the committee substitute was adopted, the floor substitute is now ruled out of order. Thanks, Senator.
Senate Bill 1777, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute, and there is a floor substitute.
The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would ask that that the committee substitute be rejected, and then if that's the case, then I will explain the floor substitute.
Thank the senator. So, with the recommendation that it be rejected, the senator is asking it to be adopted.
No, that the committee substitute be rejected.
Right. We have to put it in the affirmative. So you're saying
right.
With the
That
recommendation to be rejected,
adopted with everybody voting no.
Perfect. Right. Senator has the floor.
Well, has that been you want to know why? Okay. When that bill came out of committee, apparently what they had in there was data had to be collected for each and every correctional institution that we had in the state, and the Department of Corrections realized they'd have to hire a boatload of people, which would have put a pretty extensive price tag on this bill. So the data that's going to be collected, the data that will be collected will just be for the whole Department of Corrections system overall, answering the questions that were that they would have done. It'll be for the whole data rather than for the whole system rather than on one just one whole unit. So that's why I've asked that it be rejected. And there's one of the conditions was also changed, but that's in the substitute.
Senator has the floor.
So with that, I would ask that
renew your motion.
Yeah, I would move that it be adopted with the recommendation that we vote no.
I thank the senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The committee substitute is rejected.
Okay.
Senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
And now I would move the adoption of the substitute, and to explain.
Senator, do you want to waive the reading?
Oh, yeah, I would move we waive the reading of the substitute.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. Senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Okay. As I said before, it's going to be done for the system overall rather than each institution. Also, in the original bill, you may have noticed they listed what they would report on. Number 6 said the number of incidents of self-harm and suicide attempts and suicide by each offender during the offender stay in restrictive housing or what's called a shared allied management unit. We're continuing our great tradition of euphemisms. A shared allied management unit is a part of the system that's somewhere between the general population and restrictive housing. In other words, the problems that they're having with this individual aren't enough to send them to restrictive housing or solitary confinement, but they want them removed at least temporarily from the general population. So that we've erased that, and 7 becomes number 6, 8 becomes number 7, and 9 becomes 8. But in number 7, which is a new 6, it says, it's kind of confusing, the number of the offenders released from restrictive housing or SAM unit. The word SAM unit, or shared allied management, has been taken out. Other than that, those are the two major changes in the bill. They've they've deleted one of the reporting statements, and they're doing the prison system overall as opposed to each individual unit.
Mr. President.
Senator from Spotsylvania.
I
Senator
appreciate
Reed.
the senior senator from Fairfax explanation on the floor substitute. Would anybody mind if we just let this go by just for a few minutes so I can converse with my colleague?
Sure.
All right, without objection.
Sure.
Senate Bill 1777 will go by temporarily.
Senate Bill 1307, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice. Senate Bill 1381, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice. Senate Bill 1385, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice. Senate Bill 1638, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with a substitute.
Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
President, I move the committee substitute.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 1655, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice. Senate Bill 1659, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with a substitute, and there are two floor amendments.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first move that the committee amendment, the committee substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I next move that the reading of the floor amendment be waived.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment is drawn to the substitute, and here's the problem. I have to get into the bill just a little bit, but that'll save us some time. When a youngster, it's determined by the Commonwealth attorney in any jurisdiction that a child is going to be certified and transferred to the adult court. In many cases, this is a decision that the Commonwealth attorney gets to make. Nothing can interfere with that decision. Sometimes there are certain circumstances where the juvenile court judge makes that decision, and it's required that he have a report from the probation department that gets into 10 enumerated things that tell you all about this youngster so that you can make an informed decision. And what the purpose of the underlying bill here is that we make sure that that is available and required of Commonwealth attorneys in all situations, that this report is required to be done. And we've added in the bill 21 extra days to get this done so that they have the same information that the judge would have in making their decision. And the reason for this, Mr. Chairman, is that we want equal justice around the Commonwealth, that all children who are going through the transfer process can have this study done to ensure that it is a good decision, because we appear to be, based on the statistics, over-transferring kids. Slightly less than half of the kids who get sent to the adult system don't get adult sentences. They get local jail sentences. They get put on probation in juvenile court. They get committed to a juvenile facility. And so what this will do is save some adult court hearings. And what this amendment does, on the floor amendment does, is change may back to shall, so that everybody does this. But one of the problems brought up in the committee by one of the members was that, well, what if the child doesn't want this study, doesn't want to stay the extra 21 days in detention? You know, the report's going to be very bad and it may be prejudicial. Well, what this the First Amendment change is made to shall. The Second Amendment allows the child's legal representative, attorney, to waive the hearing so that the child can get on with the other parts of the sentence. And, Mr. Chairman, we have situations where there are parts of the Commonwealth where there are very, very heavy uses of transfers, other places where they're not. The African-American population of Virginia is about 22%. 77% of the kids in our Department of Juvenile Justice facilities are African-American. We need to make sure that everybody's getting equal justice. Everybody gets a study to look into it. It in no way inhibits the Commonwealth attorney from his from having to change his mind. It doesn't put any prescriptions on him about that. He can continue to certify the child regardless of what the report says. But this provides equal justice throughout the Commonwealth, and I urge the body to accept the floor amendment.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Speak to the amendment, Mr. President.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a tough one for me, Mr. President. I've been practicing law for nearly 30 years, and for a lot of those years, I either defended or prosecuted children, mostly defended them because I was only a prosecutor for a short period of time. The flip side of this is, and I commend the gentleman for what he's trying to do, the flip side of this is there are people who want to get to trial, and they could have a long stay in juvenile detention, which is not a good place to be, awaiting some of these reports. And that's the reason we changed that from a shall to a may. And I know the gentleman from Fairfax said that the juvenile attorney or the defendant's attorney could always waive that, but no attorney in their right mind is going to waive that, because then they would be habeas, or they could get sued for malpractice to give up something like that, even though the client wants to get out of juvenile detention for whatever the reason may be. And all these kids aren't guilty. Some of these kids are innocent, and they want to go to trial and be acquitted and have their day in court. So it seemed to me to strike a decent balance to give a may rather than that mandatory shall. You initially have a 21-day period to get a report. You could have another 21-day period. You could extend it beyond that. I don't know how long this child's going to sit in juvenile detention awaiting this investigation and this report. And I understand, and I've spoken with the gentleman from Fairfax about this, that they have a different system in Fairfax, and I don't practice law up there. But in most of the jurisdictions across the state, you know these kids. If you're working, practicing law, defending children, you know the families, you know the backgrounds, you really don't need this. And actually it could be, I believe, an impediment to defense. And I was Commonwealth's attorney. If somebody was locked up and they wanted a bond hearing, I'd give him the bond hearing the very next day we had court, even if I wasn't prepared, because I wholeheartedly believe in you are innocent until proven guilty. And I think it is paramount to our justice system. We're taking something that could keep these kids in juvenile detention for a long time. I'm telling you, I don't want to go there one day. And I don't want these children to be in there more than one day unless they absolutely have to. And if they're innocent, I don't want them there. So I hate to do it, but I would ask you to resist the floor substitute amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard? Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate my friend from King George County. I wish all Commonwealth attorneys approach the job the way he does. But around the state, there will be, if we don't have a shall in this thing, you'll have Commonwealth attorneys just decide, I'm never going to have a hearing. I don't want to hear any of those excuses that these kids have. Or you'll have rookie Commonwealth attorneys in an office of 20, 24, 25, like in Fairfax. But this isn't a Fairfax bill. This is a statewide bill. This is an administration bill. The Department of Juvenile Justice put this bill in because of the practices they see all over the Commonwealth. We're committing kids, we're transferring kids to adult court without having the necessary information. In many places, the Commonwealth attorney does not know these kids, does not know their histories. They may be sent to juvenile court for a couple of weeks of an assignment. It's the first time they've ever laid eyes on this youngster. They need this information, equal justice around the Commonwealth, and I would urge you absolutely to support this floor amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the floor amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. The floor amendments are adopted.
Senate Joint Resolution 1757, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with a substitute.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Move the committee substitute.
Question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1782, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with a substitute.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I move the committee substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Returning to page 12, Senate Bill 1777.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw. The question is on agreeing to the floor substitute. It's already been waived.
Oh, yeah. This is, Mr. President, I would make a motion that it go back to, I've talked to the chairman of Rehabilitation and Social Services. They have a meeting on Friday. They think it's basically too big a change not to go back and have the committee look at it, so I would move that the bill be referred to.
Recommit it?
Recommit it, yeah.
Take it out of the block and recommit it.
To the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services.
All right, Senator, let's take this bill out of the block first. Does the Senator want to take it out of the block?
Yes.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1777 is removed from the block. And the Senator want to renew his motion to recommit?
Yes, I would move now that the Senate Bill 1777 be recommitted to the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services.
Question is, shall Senate Bill 1777 be recommitted to the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is recommitted to the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. Question is, shall the Senate bills be engrossed in advance to their third reading? That is all bills except for Senate Bill 1777. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills are engrossed in advance to their third reading.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on second reading. Senate Bill 1263, a bill relating to juveniles' trial as adult. Reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with a substitute.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Lieutenant, Mr. President.
Going to move the committee substitute?
Yeah. Juvenile trial as adult. Yeah, adopt the substitute.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Now,
the committee substitute is adopted. Senator from Fairfax. Senator Saslaw, do you want to engross in advance?
I would dearly love to gross in advance.
Okay, that's great. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading. Well done. Well done.
Senate
Or you get the hang of it.
Senate Bill 1667, a bill relating to non-payment of child support, amount of arrearage paid, little time period to pay arrearage, repayment schedule, suspension of driver's license. Reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice.
Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and to its move to the third reading.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1758, a bill relating to custody and visitation cases, jurisdiction of court. Reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with amendment.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Move the committee amendment.
Question is, shall the committee amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Mr. President, I move the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on first reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would now move that all the Senate bills on the first reading on both the uncontested and regular calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 15 through 38, including Senate Bill 1090 through Senate Bill 1774, that the rules of the Senate be suspended excuse me, and that the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 15 through 38, Senate Bill 10 through Senate Bill 1774, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
40 nays, 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Excuse me, I've got over here to have a conversation first before I take care of it. I'd move the bills be passed by for the day, sir.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the Senate bills of the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading be passed by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day.
Regular calendar, Senate Joint Resolution on third reading. Senate Joint Resolution 283, proposing an amendment to Section 1 of Article 2 of the Constitution of Virginia relating to qualification of voters, restoration of civil rights.
Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would move that the resolution pass. I'd like to speak to that.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. You recall from our short debate we had yesterday on a possible amendment to this, that this is a constitutional amendment that would propose to put to the voters in a referendum to allow the General Assembly by statute to set some of the rules so that people upon exiting from prison, if they met certain qualifications, could have their rights automatically restored. And I would certainly hope that today we will not let the perfect get in the way of the good, because I think we will be able to open it up for quite a number of people that would be able to meet the qualifications to move forward. In a discussion on this, I was approached by the senator from Western Fairfax who dug up some of the old Constitution law that he thought might be out there that would need to be corrected. And we had thought that perhaps some of that old language out there needed to be cleared up as we were working on this with possibly an amendment. But then we realized that all that old language had been replaced with the adoption of the Constitution in 1972, so there was no need to reach back there. But as I read what had been in the Constitution, Mr. President, members of the Senate, it was really interesting. You know, the first category of people that were disqualified from voting in Virginia was in the old Constitution? Idiots. Idiots. It was in the Constitution of Virginia. Idiots could not vote. Idiots could run for election and be elected, but they could not vote. At any rate, I'm not going to speak any further to that point, but Mr. President, I would say that we have an opportunity now. In conjunction, this does not propose to limit the ability of the governor. Different governors have taken different approaches to this, but it does not limit the governor's ability for restoration of rights. It provides a venue for we, members of the General Assembly, to prescribe by statute, once this would be adopted, what the qualifications would be for automatic restoration of rights. And I think that is something that could be important as we work in the attitude of restorative justice. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Joint Resolution 283? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 283 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 3.
Ayes 37, noes 3. Senate Joint Resolution 283 is agreed to.
Regular calendar, Senate Joint Resolution on second reading. Senate Joint Resolution 306, proposing an amendment to Section 6 of Article 2 of the Constitution of Virginia and proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Virginia by adding in Article 2 a section numbered 6-A relating to apportionment, Virginia Redistricting Commission. reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with a substitute, and there are 4 floor amendments.
The senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I'll move the committee substitute.
Thank the senator.
To get things started.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
And Mr. Chair, Mr. President.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
I do not have copies of the 4 floor amendments, so I would like to. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we waive the reading of the floor amendment.
Question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been on the P&E committee for more than 25 years, and I think the meeting that we had dealing with this redistricting was perhaps the most complicated in all of that time. This amendment deals with transparency, and there was always a desire to have transparency in whatever bill came out, but unfortunately, in the complications of it all, it didn't happen. There was a feeling that the original One Virginia 2021 4-part dealing with the transparency was a bit verbose and had some things that were better dealt with in the code. But 2 parts of that that part of their bill, I think, are truly important, and that's what's in this amendment. The first is that all the meetings are going to be public, and that there will be at least 3 public hearings in different parts of the Commonwealth to receive comments from the public. Second part is that all the records and documents are going to be public, and so will any internal communications and communications from outside parties will also be public. And that's what this does. It's got the strong support of One Virginia 2021.
Thank the senator.
Be agreed to.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from James City County, Senator Normand rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. In the spirit of bipartisan collaboration, which I am hopeful will be contagious, I rise in support of the proposed amendment.
Senator has the floor.
I have said all I'm going to say.
Said all you're going to say. Oh, wow. It's outstanding. For what purpose does the senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of the amendment, and perhaps I can elaborate on his very brief remarks.
Senator has the
which
floor.
Is very rare, as the body knows. I would just like to say we heard this in committee, and I appreciate the patron who has introduced the floor amendment. The discussion was in committee whether or not this should appear in the Constitution or whether or not it should appear in criteria, and there was some difference of opinion. And I think that having it transparency is such a high priority, and as it's set forth here, I think it actually warrants being more than just criteria, but actually being in the language. And so I would also ask the members of the body to support her amendment. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to join with the senator from Fauquier, the senator from James City, and the senator from Northern Fairfax in supporting this.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on the floor amendment? Seeing none, the question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Floor amendment is agreed to. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator Sturdivant.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 3 amendments, but Mr. President, I would like to withdraw floor amendments numbers 1 and 2.
Without objection, floor amendments 1 and 2 are withdrawn.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of floor amendment number 3.
Question is, shall the reading of floor amendment number 3 be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senior Senator from Richmond City, Senator Sturdivant.
Mr. President, I move that floor amendment number 3 be agreed to, and speaking to that.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I'm very proud of what this body is in the process of doing, and that is working on real, meaningful redistricting reform. Gerrymandering is as old as politics, and both parties have done it. There's no denying that. But this is an opportunity for us in the coming decade to put before the voters and to put in our Constitution a new way forward and a way to draw districts in a way that they have not been drawn in the past, and that is by taking consideration of political party and incumbents out of the process. And that's what this very simple floor amendment seeks to do. It says no electoral district shall be drawn with the intent of favoring or disfavoring any political party, incumbent legislator or member of Congress or individual. It's short, it's to the point, it's simple, but that, I think, is its beauty is in its simplicity, and it is something that I'm hopeful that everyone in this body can get behind so that we can move into the next decade after putting this before the voters to draw our districts in the fairest way possible, and that is in a way that takes those significant political considerations out of the process as much as we possibly can. And with that, Mr. President, I'd renew my motion that we agree to the floor amendment.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak to the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I rise in opposition to this particular amendment. I do not think it is something that is useful and beneficial. I think it is something that presents some significant issues and some challenges that we could otherwise avoid in moving forward on things. This deals with the drawing of districts, the drawing of district lines, and what the effects are of those changes to those lines. Every aspect of the districts, every change that's made of the district lines favors or disfavors political parties and incumbents. So therefore, any change is automatically going to have this impact. So the question then becomes, what is the intent, and whether there is an intent to do this to specifically to favor a political party or disfavor a political party or an incumbent or someone else. Clearly, some will question the intent of the people who are involved in drawing these lines and the actions taken by the members of the Commission, of whom there will be 16, 8 citizen members, 8 legislators, 4 House members, 4 Senate members. Of those 8, 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans appointed. And some are likely to challenge the lines based upon what they believe the intent may have been. I'm less concerned about what the effect of the challenges than I am on terms of the action, the effect that it would have on the drawing of the lines themselves within the Commission and the actions taken thereafter. I think this language has a potentially chilling effect on the Commission because they will be very concerned about the risk of legal challenge, even when there's not clear intent to try to manipulate things in a nefarious way, because they don't want to go forward with something that has the potential for being challenged and in effect having a map thrown out. So therefore, I think this language being in the Constitution itself, not in code, but in the Constitution itself, would make the members of the Commission more hesitant to adjust lines of various maps that they may be presented with, to improve those maps and make them better for the citizens of the Virginia, for the citizens of the Commonwealth, rather than being able to feel less encumbered in terms of how they could act on things. I think it could particularly diminish the roles of the citizen members of the Commission who may be less involved in drafting some of the options that are looked at in the first place, because they then would have to make decisions about suggesting changes to those lines. And that's what I think is most likely to draw the legal challenges in these types of things. I think this amendment might deter the Commission from coming up with politically balanced maps, which I think is something that we all would subscribe to, because of the fear of making any decision that could jeopardize the upholding of the map when a challenge might be made. I think it makes it much more likely that in the end the courts will draw our lines, because the commission may be unable to agree on a map because they're not able to negotiate and to resolve issues in ways that are beneficial for the Commonwealth as a whole. It makes it, I think, much more likely that a party that feels it is disfavored by the maps that have been proposed by the commission would oppose it in the General Assembly and therefore not vote to approve it, because it has to come to the General Assembly for an up or down vote, and make it more likely that the governor would be taking similar action. I don't think it's in our interest to try to go forward with something that would make it more likely that we would have the courts draw lines. We've been through that with the congressional districts this decade. We've been through that now with the House of Delegates districts for this decade. I think it's better that we have people in Virginia drawing these lines and we have maps that are reflective of the citizens of the Commonwealth. The underlying resolution here that passed 13-0 with one abstention out of the Privileges and Election Committee is filled with checks and balances. I think we have extraordinarily large numbers of checks and balances requiring supermajorities in many different respects that protect everybody's interest in this process. And I am confident that with the checks and balances that are in there, that without this amendment, that we can develop good maps for the congressional districts, for the state Senate districts, and for the House of Delegate districts. This amendment sends a message that we don't trust this commission to be able to do its job before it's even formed. And I think that is inappropriate for us to move forward with this type of thing right now and to, in effect, start to put criteria into a constitution rather than into the Code of Virginia. And I would hope it be the pleasure of the body to reject this amendment.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Speak to the amendment, Mr. President.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I've been in the General Assembly for 16 years, and 12 of that was in the body down the hall. And with profuse thanks to Senator Norman, the gentleman from James City County, I'm on P&E in the Senate. Again. But let me tell you, in all of that time serving on P&E, I have never, ever voted for one of these bills. Never. But I believe the time is ripe for one of these bills. And the P&E committee looked at all the bills and rolled the proposed bills into Senator Barker's bill. You know, it was said that the beauty is in the simplicity of the amendment, but I can tell you that a landmine is simple in design, but it makes it no less lethal. The gentleman from Southern Fairfax was dead on his comments about the ability in the future to look at this and say, whoever has the upper hand in a drawn district by this commission will have been favored either by party or whatever criteria. There's always going to be that ability to say, hey, that's blatantly unconstitutional. The General Assembly said you couldn't do it, and you did it. This amendment will destroy this bill. And if this amendment's in the bill, I'm not going to vote for this one. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds, rise?
Mr. President, to speak to the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, since about 2002 or 2003, I've been introducing redistricting constitutional amendments and bills. And this constitutional amendment is not the one that I would have introduced. It's not entirely consistent with everything that my ideas have put forth in the years past and even this year, but it's still a step forward. It's a step forward. I would prefer to have a commission that makes the final decision and keep the General Assembly out of it, because I think we have a built-in conflict of interest in drawing our own districts. And I disagree with my friend from Southern Fairfax, because I don't think that political balance is something that we should strive for. I think what we should strive for is a fair district, fairly drawn districts that gives the people of the Commonwealth the opportunity to select their representatives of their choice. We don't have a constitutional right to these seats. We sit here because people elect us. This language that's offered by the senior senator from Richmond is similar to what's already part of the law in Iowa. and the constitutional districts there. The districts that work there, both congressional and legislative, are drawn using criteria similar to this. I think it works very well out there, and I'm going to vote for it. I'd urge you to as well.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben rise?
To speak in favor of the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
I might be a glutton for punishment, but I am one to be grateful for being on the P&E committee. And further, I'm grateful to the senior senator from Richmond for this amendment. The senator from Bath mentioned that this is similar to a component of the Iowa constitutional redistricting amendment. And I would say it's not just Iowa. It's all but one of the states that have a redistricting commission. Similar provisions are in Utah, Michigan, Missouri, Colorado, Arizona, California, Iowa, and Florida as well. The public expects us, if we're going to reform redistricting, to allow the voters to have more say, more of a voice in the elections, not less. And the current system in the mind of the voters of Virginia, or those that are paying close attention and concerned about why their districts shift around and why their districts don't seem to be competitive in cases where they could be competitive, is broken. And we have a chance to fix it. And the amendment provides, the underlying constitutional amendment resolution provides for a commission. But this amendment says the purpose of a commission. It's not just to draw districts, it's to draw districts without political considerations. So I hope that we'll do that and that we'll adopt the amendment. It is simple, and it speaks for a very simple principle, democracy. With that, I hope we pass the amendment.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from James City County, Senator Norman rise?
To speak about the bill.
Senator has the floor.
First of all, I want to thank the senior senator from Richmond. I know that he has offered this amendment because he, in fact, is committed to it and believes in it. But also, I want to thank him. It is a rare opportunity that I ever get a compliment on anything, and just feeling all the love emanating from the senior senator from Chesapeake is almost more than I can embrace on that. But I want to thank the senator from Southern Fairfax. For one occasion, we all know that the only thing that he does faster than running is speaking. And I want to thank him because he was speaking in a very deliberate manner that even I could understand this afternoon. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for picking up on my innuendo a moment ago that we're going to enjoy some bipartisanship. And I rise and associate myself with the comments from the senator from Southern Fairfax and encourage us to resist the amendment.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
Very briefly, I just wanted to address the concern raised by the, I can't remember where he's from, gentleman from Southern Fairfax about the chilling effect that he believes this amendment would have on the commission. I didn't have the privilege of being on this side of the Capitol when we did redistricting, but I was on the other side of the Capitol and had the very strange experience of being a witness, not once but twice, in a lawsuit challenging redistricting maps. And when that process started, everybody lawyered up. When the bills weren't even introduced yet, the P&E committee and the people working with legislative services had a lawyer, the caucuses had lawyers, and everybody, when they had proposals for changes to the bills as introduced, they consulted with a lawyer. And I think whether we pass this amendment, whether we pass this resolution, more likely than not, just given where politics is today and given that redistricting brings out the worst in everybody, my guess is going forward, everybody's going to lawyer up anyway. And whoever is perceived to be on the losing end of redistricting is probably going to try to file a lawsuit. But when that lawsuit is filed, you have to prove that there was an intent to favor or disfavor any political party. Well, you know how you avoid such a finding? When you're drawing the maps, don't use political performance index data to draw it. And when you draw it, look at, are you keeping communities of interest together? Are you dividing the Commonwealth in a way that preserves one man, one vote? Are you complying with federal law under the Equal Protection Clause and the Voting Rights Act? And if you've done that, it's going to be very difficult, regardless of the impact. If the impact of the plan is it favors one party over another, that's not what the intent of drawing it was, because you didn't look at the data to begin with. And my guess is if no one on that commission is looking at the political data when drawing the map, it's going to be very difficult for even the best lawyer to prove their intent was to favor one political party over the other. And that's why I think if we're serious about saying we want to end gerrymandering, then just take the tools out of their hand that are used to do political gerrymandering. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is Senator from Roanoke County? Senator Suderline rise.
Mr. President, speaking of the motion briefly.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, I would just like to suggest that if we want to take political data out of the map-making process, we have to make sure that the people drawing the map have never seen an election result in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm serious. Does anyone not remember when we were watching our last Senate returns and the Senate was hinging on one district left and the one county that hadn't reported was Powhatan? I knew things were looking pretty good from my perspective. And I suggest that other folks that wanted the Senate election to go a different way weren't happy that Powhatan was what was remaining. Now, is that because anyone had all the election data on Powhatan, or is it because we had observed an election happening in the Commonwealth before? And so I would just speak to that and leave that thought with you as we consider this amendment.
Thanks, Senator. For what purpose does the Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker, rise?
Mr. President, I don't do this too often, but I do rise to agree wholeheartedly with my colleague from Roanoke County, with one exception, and that was I didn't think we were looking too good when Powhatan was the only county out. So it was clear what the effect was going to be. And I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that there is absolutely no way possible, unless we sequester people without access to internet or TV or anything else, that the members of the commission. Because I guarantee you, whenever maps are proposed to the commission members, within 2 hours, the political calculations will have been made by everybody as to what those districts reflect. And it is simply something that is not possible other than pure sequestration in Antarctica or somewhere to be able to get a group of people who won't know anything about the political implications of things. And that's the fact of the matter, and it's reality that we have to recognize here, and we can't pretend that we're going to have these maps drawn and voted on when there are going to be multiple proposals of maps, presumably, and they won't know anything about the political implications of any of it. So I think that we need to recognize reality, to trust the members of the commission to be able to work together, because they have to collaborate. To pass any map, you have to get 6 of the 8 citizen members to vote for it, and you have to get 6 of the 8 legislators, which can include 4 people from one party and 2 from the other, or 3 from each. But you have to compromise and have to make sure that it's a plan that everybody, citizens and legislators, Republicans and Democrats, support to be able to move forward with. And I think it's time for us to trust the commission to help to come up with a map, rather than pretend we can inoculate them from knowing anything about political data or what the voting patterns are in Virginia. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose does the senior senator from Richmond, Senator Sturdivant, rise?
Mr. President, if no one else wishes to speak on the matter.
Do any other senators wish to be heard? Seeing none, Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I want to echo the comments, especially of the other senator from Richmond City. I think she hit the nail on the head. And in our districts, which are next to each other, there are, as I'm sure many of you have similar situations, she will represent one side of a street and I'll represent another side of the street. Obviously, you have to draw the line somewhere, but what we've been doing in the past has not been working. Listening to the comments today, I would submit that we are, through this resolution, going to be creating an independent redistricting commission, and that is the hope. But I would submit we are not putting in this resolution the most important part, and that is in this floor amendment. We do not want this redistricting commission drawing districts to favor or disfavor a political party, an incumbent legislator, a member of Congress, or an individual. None of us wants or should want that. And this is the protection that we need in this resolution. And then I think secondly, as we all know, legal challenges have been ongoing since the last maps were drawn. And we've now had situations where a consultant from California has been redrawing those maps. And that's not the democratic process. That is not the way that this process should work. And so, again, I would renew my motion that the floor amendment be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is agreed to. Seeing at least 8 hands, we'll have a recorded vote. Question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 17, noes 23.
Ayes 17, noes 23. The floor amendment fails. Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we now engross and advance this to its third reading.
Question is, shall the joint resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Resolution is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Supplemental calendar number 1.
Mr. President.
Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance.
Thank you. Having voted on the prevailing side for which we passed SJR 283, I would ask if it could reconsider it to allow somebody to vote.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the vote by which SJR 283 was agreed to be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Finally, 40 ayes, 0 nays.
40 ayes, 0 nays. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having previously been explained, I move that SGR 283 be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 283 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Actually, they'll record your vote aye. Those opposed will record their vote no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 3.
Ayes 37, noes 3. Senate Joint Resolution 283 is agreed to.
Supplemental calendar number 1. Regular calendar Senate bill on first reading. Senate Bill 1372. a bill relating to conformity of the Commonwealth's taxation system with the Internal Revenue Code emergency.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Inquire of the clerk. Does that complete today's calendar?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business to come before the Senate? Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Mr. President, I rise to speak on a point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I wanted to let you know that a lot of people here, probably having watched this redistricting debate, think there are two parties in this chamber, Republicans or Democrats. I always say there's not. There's two parties, but it's really the Finance Committee and everybody else. And the reason why I say that is sometimes, and I know the chairman of Finance, knowing that my powers of erudition outstrip my abilities of intuition, did not name me to Finance. And yet I, as a small business owner and a taxpayer, always treat very carefully the decisions by the Finance Committee because it affects my family, it affects my business. And that's why this year, when I'm knowing that the President and his benevolence had passed tax breaks that flowed down to high earners like my clients, of course, not me, but I wanted to be able to rush forward and take advantage of that and get my tax return to the U.S. Post Office. And, of course, I waited eagerly for the bill to emerge from Finance, knowing that I could just put a rubber stamp on it, not actually have to read it as a representative of the 34th Senate District. And so I was very surprised to see that the conformity bill, as it is, that passed out today, actually has a number of changes. And I just very briefly, it looks like there's an income tax refund. There's something called GILTI, which apparently has nothing to do with sin, but has to do with some type of foreign ownership of income. There's a 1/5 subtraction of business interest. There's something called SALT, which is not the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty for those of us from the 1970s, but apparently state and local tax limitation reversal. There's a standard deduction increase. There's a number of substantive matters that have been tacked on to a bill that previously was just something we passed through just so we could give relief to small business owners like yours truly and make sure that they could, again, rush to the post office to get that tax return in the mail promptly to get their refund check. So I would simply tell you folks, look, I'm just an unfrozen caveman attorney from Fairfax City, but I do read this stuff. And I can't just rubber stamp something that has this many substantive changes wrapped up in a conformity bill. And I really was hoping, all joking aside, that we could just pass the conformity bill and pass that tax relief on to our constituents, and ourselves for that matter. But it looks like we're not going to be in that position, unfortunately. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I just will end with the point that I began with. There are only two parties in this body, the Senate Finance and the rest of us. So y'all on Finance, give some relief to us little people. Okay, give us a chance to actually give tax relief before you actually require us to read this legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank the Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to make an announcement.
Senator has the floor.
Not a point of personal privilege in response to the senator over here, because we'll work that out later. But just tonight, Mr. President, we have our reception, our annual reception with the Center for Rural Virginia. I have the honor of chairing the Center for Rural Virginia, which focuses on creating economic opportunities and improving quality of life throughout rural Virginia. The senator from Mecklenburg is the chair of the Rural Caucus, and we share responsibilities with this. The reception tonight will be at the Omni. It will start at 5:30. At 6 p.m., we're going to be honored by a few words from Governor Northam. At 6:30, I believe, we will be honored by some remarks from our esteemed President of the Senate. And then at 7, we're going to have some remarks from an economist talking us about some of the challenges in the economy that we're confronted with now. So, Mr. President, we're expecting a large crowd. Hopefully the weather won't interfere with that. We're at near capacity, but certainly we would welcome every member of the Senate to join us tonight at the Omni. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. Returning to the morning hour briefly, if we can.
Without objection.
I think, Mr. President, I happened to notice my aide bring some very special people into the gallery today who were down here over at VCU, and that is Miss Ceci and Natalie Del Rosario. I met them this summer trying to help them with an issue they had, and couldn't be prouder of Natalie as she continues to battle cancer. Mr. President, so if you would give them a warm welcome of the Senate. Thank you.
I thank the senator. Would our friends Ceci and Natalie Del Rosario please rise in the gallery if you are able? Ceci and Natalie, thank you all so much for joining us here today. We are honored by your presence, and we're grateful for your family bond and for all that you're going through, that you still take the time to be here with us and to provide inspiration to so many people. Natalie, we're very, very proud of you, and look forward to seeing you here for many, many more years to come. And we echo the generous and eloquent words of the Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves. You are family here, and I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to Ceci and Natalie Del Rosario. Senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are still in the morning hour. Is that correct?
Without objection, the Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we actually have somebody in the gallery who has been a friend of mine for a long, long time. Back when I had a mustache, people would ask me, how things in Front Royal? And I'd say, beats me, I don't know. Because you'd need to ask actually at that time, Delegate Clay Athey that question. And they'd ask Delegate Athey, how's things in Chesapeake? He said, no. Go down and talk to John. He is in our gallery today. We served together in the other chamber, which we don't mention here. And he is now a respected jurist in the Commonwealth. And Mr. President, if you would offer the warm welcome of the Senate to former, down the hall, Clay Athey.
I thank the Senator. Would former delegate and now Judge Clay Athey please rise in the gallery if you're able? Clay, I know you see a whole bunch of friendly faces, and always proud to have you back here in the Senate chamber. Thank you for your leadership in the Commonwealth of Virginia and for all you do for Shenandoah Valley, but also for the entire Commonwealth. We appreciate your example and your leadership, and I'm sure that all your friends here will give a very warm welcome to Judge Clay Athey. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Rise for a point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I was amused at the reference the senator from Fairfax City made about being a frozen or an unfrozen caveman. One of the wonderful things, if you track back through genealogy, is that even cavemen eventually evolved to become very articulate and educated individuals, and individuals who have the ability to read and to understand, to dissect and rationalize pieces of legislation. And I would say, Mr. President, that I hope the senator from Fairfax still feels very comfortable that he can run down to the mailbox, put his 55-cent stamp on there because it's just been raised 10%, and have some sort of satisfaction and delight that he is going to get more money back if, in fact, we are able to pass this conformity bill that decouples a couple of things. And I know that he has exhaustively looked into it, but out of the 2018 tax return, if he and his lovely bride were to file a joint return, they will get $220 back that they may not otherwise have gotten. I would say that guilty, I know that he is a very affluent attorney, and so he probably has made some investments in some foreign corporations on that, so he may receive the benefit of that. If he's like some small law firms, I recall when I was in that situation, we used to take out interim loans to get us through those slow periods of times when we did not have the cash flow that we want. This will allow him and his law firm to deduct 20% of the interest, which they currently would not be able to do. So that's going to help your bottom line in that regard. I would also say that under the SALT, this isn't the salt of the earth, that because he is such an affluent and successful an attorney, that he won't be caught in that federal cap and will be able to deduct interest and taxes that exceed $10,000. But also, Mr. President, that under this proposed bill, that we are going to increase the standard deduction to $4,500 and $9,000, which is going to also help you get more money back. So I am very hopeful as we continue to move forward that just like the cavemen, that the understanding of this bill will evolve and that we'll have some enthusiasm, and I'll look forward to running to the mailbox with him, and I'll even bring a 55-cent stamp.
Senator Peterson? Yeah. I think Senator Norman has offered to do everyone's taxes here, so you all can get his advice later. The senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, a little bird has told me that someone is in the gallery from Fairfax County, a retiring Board of Supervisors member from Providence District, Linda Smith, who has put in many, many years in the trenches. I have exactly one of my 41 precincts in her magisterial district, but it's the one I went to elementary school in, and that's where all the trouble started. So at any rate, I would ask you to give the warm Senate welcome to retiring Supervisor Linda Smith. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank the senator. Would Supervisor Linda Smith please rise in the gallery? Supervisor Smith, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your leadership and your service in Fairfax County and throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. You have had a stellar and distinguished career as a supervisor, notwithstanding your connection to the senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden, but we are grateful to you and the example that you have set and the legacy that you've left, and there is much more to come for you, but I would ask everyone please to join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to Supervisor Linda Smith. Is there any other business to come before the Senate? Seeing none, the clerk will report any announcements on the desk.
Today, Wednesday, January 30th, the Committee for Courts of Justice will meet 15 minutes after adjournment, Senate Room A, Pocahontas. Courts of Justice, 15 minutes after adjournment, Senate Room A, Pocahontas. The Committee on Transportation will meet 15 minutes after adjournment in Senate Room 3. Immediately. Transportation will meet immediately after adjournment in Senate Room 3 in the Capitol. The Finance Subcommittee on Transportation will meet at 4 o'clock in Subcommittee Room 1 on the 5th floor, Pocahontas, Senators Wagner, Saslaw, Newman, Carrico, Barker, and Donovan. Tomorrow, Thursday, January 31st, the Finance Subcommittee on Capital Outlay and General Government will meet at 8 a.m. Subcommittee Room 1, 5th floor, Pocahontas. Senators Norman, Saslaw, Hanger, Lucas, Ruff, Wagner, McDougall, Vogel, Obenshain, and Dance. The Hampton Roads Caucus will meet at 8 a.m. Subcommittee Room number 3, 5th floor, Pocahontas Building. The Committee on Education and Health will meet at 8 a.m. Senate Room A in Pocahontas. The Committee on Commerce and Labor will meet at 8:30 a.m. Senate Room 3 in the Capitol. The Republican Caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. Senate Room 2 in the Capitol. The Democratic Caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. in Senate Room 1 in the Capitol. And tomorrow, Finance will meet 1/2 hour after adjournment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate stands adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow.